That's the third way. Now, when it comes to cashing out to preserve the integrity of the monies, that's where postal banking comes in. Now, there are two more ways, making a total 5 ways as to how you can use a PPM. But those 2 more ways, you require the first 3, which is either using your private equity privately and having order in due course come to you, or converting your private equity into a public one and have private investments come to you, or using a PPM via an insurance. And one of those 3 ways has to be done for the 2 more advanced manner to exist. So I'm not even going to speak of those 2 advanced manner. And for those who intend to use insurance with that birth certificate to cash out, you will first need to know whether whatever type of insurance you want or already have, because you can take an insurance that you already have and basically convert it so long as it's attached to the birth certificate. Or you can just create a new one from scratch, which I think is better. But most people already have indexed life insurance or other type of life insurances. Just make sure that those insurances, whatever it is, have MET clauses and chastity bond clauses, because they have a lot to do with takeover. I went over it briefly in other videos, but I don't want to deviate too far. So those are the ways right there. Now, the second method, called private investment in public equity. Let me explain that a little bit further to you so you get it, because that's the part that I haven't explained quite a lot in other videos. A private investment in public equity. A private investment in public equity involves the selling of publicly traded common shares or some form of preferred stock or convertible security to private investors. This, in short, is called a buyback. If you're taking something private and you're turning it into a public equity, and private investors are obtaining it, in so many words, that's what this word buyback is. This word, private investment in public equity, is a substitute word for buyback, but at the same time, it's not. It's not a substitute word for buyback because a private investment in public equity directly ties to the vehicle you use to enforce it, whereby a buyback is just a term that summarizes what private investment in public equity entails. In other words, a private investment in public equity can always be a buyback, but a buyback is not always a private investment in public equity. Buyback, what it means and why companies do it. What is a buyback? A buyback is a company's purchase of its own outstanding stock shares. Buybacks reduce the number of shares available to the open market. Now let's read what a private investment in public equity means again. It involves the selling of publicly traded common shares. The selling of publicly traded common shares, that's 1. Or some form of preferred stock, that's 2. Or convertible securities to private investors. See this third part of private investment in public entity? Remember, this is selling of it. Buyback is, well, you're buying back something that belongs to you. This thing called convertible securities to private investors is exactly what you're doing. This third definition of private investment in public equity. Once you take something private and you make it public equity, you design and format the contract in a manner through private placement that makes that private equity that you turn into a public equity a convertible security. That's the key. I hope you're catching this. Contract law and the game of contract and the game of pen and paper is so cold. And once you see what you can do, and once you see what people have been doing, You realize, holy crap. Let me explain that again. Private investment in public equity usually involves selling something, such as common shares or preferred stock. But the loophole is that selling a type of interest, by the way, I hope you comprehend that stock is equity and shares just means interest. When you sell that interest, meaning you convert your private equity into a public one, you clad it with a contract, a clause, making that particular percentage of share that you're making into a public equity a convertible one to private investors, hence the term private investment and public equity. And guess who the private investors will be? One of the trust within your trust treaty will be one of the private investors that would buy back. A buyback is a company's purchase of its outstanding stock shares. It reduces the number of shares available in the open market. That's the purpose of it. To take something that's a public equity and reduce it because, well, it's going somewhere. It's becoming private again. The contract that allows you to do that is called the convertible securities clause. You add that into your PPM. See how we got here from the definition of a PPM? You add this clause into your PPM. Therefore, it opens up the door for the second manner of your interest in that birth certificate to be convertible security. So when you take a percentage of your private interest and you make it a public equity, you do so by making that share, that interest, that stock, that equity, you make it a convertible security through a convertible security. That way, one of the trusts within your trust minute can do a buyback on it. This is the importance of having a trust treaty. Many people have never, ever even heard this term called trust treaty before. Neither they even know how it works. I'm explaining it to you here. This is the name of the game that no website would ever explain or break down to you. Electronic Code of Federal Regulations. What we're particularly looking for is Chapter 2, Part 240, Regulation D. Part 240, where are you? General Rules and Regulations. Excuse me, Part 230, I believe that's what it is. There we go. There we go. The Security Exchange Regulations Act. General Rules and Regulations, Securities Act of 1933. Oh, yeah. What are we looking for? Subsection 230.506. Yep. There we go. Exemption for limited offers and sales without regard for dollar amount of offering. This quote, without regard to dollar amount of offering, is what they mean when they say that birth certificate is unlimited. Yep. But let's not get carried away first. Let's go into the details, the sobering one. I slightly went over this and told you, look, go over it, read it.
There's a significance and there's a purpose, and here it is. From the Securities and Exchange Commission, Rule 506B. Now, before going any further, just so you know, this Rule 506B and the subsequent parts we're going to be mentioning actually derives from the 17 Code of Federal Regulation, subsection 230.506. Exemption from limited offers. Remember that first video, initial public offering? Exemption from limited offers and sales, meaning how monies are used, without regard to dollar, no matter how large it is, without regard to dollar amount of offering. The last part that says without regards to dollar amount of offering, Have you ever heard of something called infinite banking or legacy banking? That's what they're making reference to here. At your leisure, read this, have fun with all the legalese. But in this video, we'll just summarize it by going to the horse's mouth and giving you the specificities of what was mentioned in the patron post regarding birth certificate monetization and private placement memorandums. Private placement.
I hope you have. That way you can easily follow along with what I'm about to explain here. 17 CFR subsection 230.506. Exemption for limited offers and sales without regards to dollar amount of offering. If we're going to make this video this long, we might as well make it worth it. Because these are substantive things. People pay tens of thousands of dollars to get, to know. You're getting it with an amount that barely fills up a gas tank. This is the origin of that PPM and then their exemption. I'm not just going to tell you this exists. I'm going to show you the origin of it. I will show you the substance of it. Because at some point, some of this just might sound too good to be true. But look, they created regulations for it. Exemptions. A. Offers and sales of security by issuer. We've went over this in other videos, so you should know what this is. In short, to express trust that satisfies the condition in paragraph B or C of this section shall be deemed to be transactions not involving public offering within the remaining section 4A2 of this act. So, private investment in public equity. This particular portion of the exemption is what's applicable to it. When I made that video thumbnail last shown, I knew very well there would be many people who would not be able to open that treasury account. But there's still a way out through private investment in public equity. So I preemptively placed that in that video. So you can't say you were never shown in case one manner didn't work for you. So now here's the other manner that works for you. And I'm showing you the language of why and how. Transactions not involving any public offering. So you don't have the treasury account, therefore no IPO can be done with or by holders in due course on your behalf. Not a problem, not the end of the world. Conditions to be met in offering subject to limitation on manner of offering in your contract. General condition. To qualify for an exemption under this section, offers and sales must satisfy all the terms and conditions in subsection 235.01 and 235.02. See these conditions and terms? That's what I implement into the PPM. That's the reason why you need a PPM, because all this requirement of 230 using a public entity of some sort owned by the same express trust that issued that public equity without doing an IPO, without opening a treasury account. See all this vast information and this vast option people have? If you know these things, you can't help but just smile or laugh when you read social media posts, people talking about treasury, SBC, one man out, this and that. You realize people don't get it. You realize people don't get it. What they're really looking for is this. Conditions to be met in offering not subject to limitation or manner of offering. General conditions. To qualify for exemption under the section, sales, which is the first part, must satisfy all the terms and conditions in 230.501, which is what we just read, which is definition of accredited investors, and 502A and D, which is implemented into the PPM. See the power of PPM? Every requirement for the exemption is in it because the PPM is the medium that expresses and justifies.
The complete 56-minute video is posted on the Patreon page. Take care. Best of luck.